This past weekend, Richard Petty admitted that he's bothered by the downsizing of his role at Legacy Motor Club, and Kyle Busch has yet another new sponsor. How's it going, y'all? My name is Eric. Welcome to Out of the Groove. Busy week ahead. The hosts of the Scene Vault podcast will be on in a couple days to talk about their LW Wright story. Looking forward to that. But before we get into the news today, this episode is sponsored by my friends at 1821 Man-Made. 1821 Man-Made offers top-shelf grooming goods for the aspiring gentleman. Inspired by Prohibition-era bootleggers, the 1821 Barrel House empowers men to be the gentleman they deep down aspire to be through professional grade grooming products and lifestyle wisdom. I love the different flavors of their 3-in-1 shower gel for beard, hair, and body. And for the fragrance obsessed, the Spirit Spritzer is available in 2 long-lasting scents. Head on over to 1821manmade.com. Link is also down in the description below to pick up some of these premium products for yourself. Right now you can use code 1821NASCAR for 20% off your purchase. Be sure to check them out. Thank you to 1821 Man-Made for sponsoring the show. First up, Kyle Busch has a new paint scheme and a new sponsor. Lucas Oil will sponsor the number 8 Chevy this weekend at Auto Club Speedway. That blue scheme is gonna blend in nicely against those outside walls in Fontana. I like this paint scheme though. It's real simple, but if the blue looks as good on the track as it does in this render, then I'm a fan. The red and white stripe sort of there behind the front tire is very HendrickCars.com-esque, but I'm just gonna pretend I didn't see it. I'm just gonna pretend I didn't notice that. RCR's strategy of going to half a dozen or more different companies to piece together a full season of sponsorship seems to be working for their new superstar driver. It makes you wonder if JGR's strategy of chasing one huge partner for the majority of races is becoming outdated. The days of one primary sponsor covering all 38 Cup Series races a season are pretty much a thing of the past. I mean, Alex Bowman and Ally, they sponsor every race. Kroger, and brands they have a relationship with, sponsor basically every race for Ricky Stenhouse. HendrickCars.com and Larson. Shell Pennzoil sponsors like all but 1 or 2 races a year for Joey Logano. FedEx does nearly all of Hamlin's. Smithfield does nearly all of Almirola's, but that's about it. That's the list. The full season sponsors are fantastic when you can get them, but they're becoming fewer and farther in between. I imagine Joe Gibbs Racing is going to have to adjust their strategy before long. Speaking of new sponsors, Tyler Reddick is set to debut an all-new Monster Energy scheme this weekend at Auto Club Speedway. This tweet from Adam Stern basically sums it up. Monster Energy will start promoting its new flavored alcoholic beverages in NASCAR for the first time, with Beast Unleashed set to serve as a primary partner of 2311's number 45 Toyota for multiple races starting this weekend at Auto Club. The paint scheme unveil is Thursday, and you can see some of the designs on those cans. Does this mean we'll see a unique Monster Energy scheme for a change? Not just matte black with the green M? I like that look. It's simple, it's iconic, but I'd love to see some variation, especially now that we have Ty Gibbs running a monster car and cup, as well as Tyler Reddick, of course, Riley Herbst. I assume Haley Deegan will run some monster trucks this year. Monster Energy sponsored trucks this year. She might run monster trucks too, I don't know. But with so many plain black and green paint schemes on track, it'd be nice for some variation, and it sounds like we might be getting that in just a couple days with Tyler Reddick. So yeah, just something to keep an eye out. Okay, but the big story that I want to cover in this video actually broke Saturday when I was at the racetrack, but there was so much else going on. Everyone was so busy preparing for the Daytona 500 that I think this story kind of got swept under the rug. I saw some conversation about it on social media, but I wanted to chime in as well. On Saturday, NBC Sports published this article, Richard Petty bothered by downsizing of role at teams since Jimmy Johnson's arrival. I'll put the link to the full article down in the description below, but I want to read just the first paragraph. Nate Ryan of NBC Sports says, Richard Petty concedes he's been miffed at the downsizing of his role at the Cup team that bore his name before Jimmy Johnson became a minority owner last year. Petty GMS Racing was renamed Legacy Motor Club for the 2023 NASCAR Cup Series season, and the King has no ownership stake in the organization that includes the number 43 he made famous. He sold his shares to Maury Gallagher in a deal before last season. Now, maybe I missed something and I'm just totally clueless, but that last sentence was news to me. I didn't realize that Petty had sold his shares to Maury Gallagher as well. It used to be Richard Petty Motorsports, where Richard Petty was a minority owner. The majority owner was Andrew Murstein. When Maury Gallagher and GMS came in to make it Petty GMS, I guess I assumed they were buying Murstein's stake in the team, but Petty was keeping whatever he had. That does not appear to be the case. Apparently, Maury Gallagher bought everyone's stake. Petty's, Murstein's, the whole thing. So all of last year, Richard Petty was not an owner, not even a minority owner of Petty GMS Racing. I did not know that. Maybe I just misread something and have been in the dark this whole time, but yeah, that was news to me. I don't know if it was news to you. Back to the article, though. Richard Petty was asked, does having a lesser role with the team bother you? And Petty replied, yes, it does. And then he laughed a little bit, because I've done things my way, which hasn't been too good lately. But as time progresses, things change in the world. Then it probably was time for a change. Jimmy's looking not necessarily at what's going to happen this year, but he's trying to lay a foundation for 4 or 5 years where he's still young enough that he's going to be around for a long, long time. Once again, the link to the full article will be in the description below, but in it, Petty also says that he and Jimmy Johnson only agree on the direction of the team about 50% of the time. And Petty admits that he's still adjusting to no longer having the final say. Petty said, quote, most of the time, I run the majority of the show. Jimmy brought all his people in, and his way of running things and my way of running things are probably a little bit different, okay? So, based on all the quotes we've read so far, it's safe to say Richard Petty and Jimmy Johnson don't quite see eye to eye, but this is just my opinion. I don't believe there's any serious animosity there. Richard Petty did have this to say about Jimmy Johnson and his future with Legacy Motor Club. Petty said, quote, I think Jimmy's really looking to the future. Basically, he'll wind up running the show in 4 to 5 years. He'll probably be the majority owner of our operation in 4 to 5 years. I know that they're looking at things completely differently. Jimmy's very observant. Jimmy controls everything, basically. You're making postcards and stuff. He has to approve it. He approves everything. He's a pretty busy man right now. Very interesting comments. Jimmy Johnson is 47 years old, which in the world of NASCAR team ownership, he's basically a newborn baby. Richard Petty, by comparison, is 85, and Maury Gallagher, I believe, is 71. So when Petty says, yeah, Jimmy's going to run this show in 4 or 5 years, it's probably not entirely wrong. I remember a few months ago, Maury Gallagher said that there's sort of a sense of urgency to win now. I think he knows he may not be in a position to run the team for, too long. So there is a sense of urgency right now, but Jimmy Johnson is that future plan. He is that succession plan. So I think Richard Petty's probably right when he says in 4 or 5 years, Jimmy's going to be in control, full control. There's more in that article. I encourage you to go check it out, but just my reaction to the highlights. I hope Richard Petty is able to adjust to his new role, because these are all changes that needed to happen. Let's go back a couple of years. Richard Petty Motorsports was not a successful organization. They went winless from 2015 to 2021. Then Andrew Murstein bows out, Maury Gallagher comes in. He and GMS come in with an aggressive mindset and deep pockets. Now enter Jimmy Johnson, championship pedigree, much younger than Petty, much younger than Gallagher, ready to form a long-term plan. Richard Petty needs to be able to buy in. Richard Petty should not be in control of personnel decisions or competition decisions, anything like that. The best thing Richard Petty can do right now is just be Richard Petty. Be an icon. Be the hat. Be the shades. Be the smile. Be the king. The king is still an amazing brand. A brand that still sells. Let Jimmy Johnson, let Maury Gallagher handle the day-to-day, the competition, the difficult decisions. The team needed to go in a different direction, but Richard Petty and that iconic 43 are both powerful icons, and they're both still around. Richard Petty's name may not be on the building, but he's still a brand ambassador. He was at the Rose Parade. He was out on the grid before the truck race with GMS. Richard Petty just needs to focus on being Richard Petty. There are a lot of Richard Petty fans still out there. He doesn't own the team anymore, but he can still have an impact. I hope there's no bad blood internally at Legacy Motor Club, and I don't really think there is. But I sensed early on, and I talked about on this show, that Legacy Motor Club was kind of scrambling this offseason. That press conference at Phoenix last fall when they introduced Jimmy Johnson just didn't offer many specifics. It was very vague. I even talked to Richard Petty briefly on this show back in January, and I asked about his new role. I asked about Jimmy Johnson's role.
Well, really, it's all brand new, okay? And we're trying to really sit down and see what perimeters each one of us can contribute to Petty GMS. And, I've talked to Jimmy a little bit. I've got another meeting with him, sit down and say, okay, this is what I'm going to take care of. This is what you need to take care of and to grow the company.
It's all still very new, so I don't blame Richard Petty, who's an 85-year-old man, for having a hard time adjusting to a new role. I mean, for decades, Richard Petty has always been the most important man in the room. When was the last time Richard Petty walked into a room and didn't have everyone's attention? I can't imagine that happens very often. But he doesn't own the team anymore. I hope he's comfortable, able to get comfortable, being hands-off and letting Maury Gallagher and Jimmy Johnson kind of run the show. Because with all due respect, when it was Richard Petty running the show, the team did not have much success, certainly not consistently. So I'm excited to see the new direction that Jimmy Johnson and GMS take Legacy Motor Club over the next several years and beyond. But that's my reaction to Jimmy Johnson's comments. I don't think there's any serious bad blood. I think some of the headlines and some of the quotes out of context sound worse than they actually came across. Petty's having a hard time adjusting, sure, but at the end of the day, he sold the team. So I think eventually he'll figure out a place, he'll become more comfortable with it, and I think Jimmy Johnson is going to eventually lead this team to greatness. But share your thoughts down in the comment section below. It is weird not having a Richard Petty name on a race car in 2023, but the iconic 43 is still out there. Richard Petty himself is sounds like he's still gonna be at the track. He was there all week at Daytona. I wanna know what you think, especially if you're a longtime Richard Petty 43 fan. Let me know. But that's gonna do it for this episode. If you enjoyed this video, please leave it a like. If you're new to the channel and you love stock car racing, hit that subscribe button. And thank you to my Patreon supporters, as always, for your very generous support. Again, lots of content coming your way over the next few days. I will see you again really soon. Thanks for watching, y'all.